All right, we are looking at comprehension, assessment, and academic standards. And this will become clear, but we're going to focus on comprehension first. Think about it. How do you teach, in quotation marks, comprehension? How do you document academic standards in a way that is pragmatic and effective? What's cognitive modeling? And how are graphic organizers used to teach comprehension? Hopefully we will address these questions. But first of all, comprehension is an active process. You can't be comprehended at. You have to do something with your brain. You have to be actively engaged, even at a very minute level. So, it is a cognitive process, something you do. It's a thinking process. It is creating meaning with print. And you've heard me say this before. We teach the process to develop the skill. We teach the cognitive process related to comprehending to develop the skill so students don't think about it, so they do it automatically while they are reading. Now, these are all cognitive processes that have been shown to lead to improved comprehension. And you see them all here. I don't need to read them for you, but our goal is automaticity. So we do it automatically. So as we are reading, we infer automatically. We think about supporting details, cause-effect relationships. We predict, we recognize story grammar. We reflect metacognition. So we teach these explicitly. We make it very specific, very concrete, with the idea that they will internalize these cognitive processes and they'll do it automatically. And I'll show you what I mean. But we can improve comprehension by improving thinking. Comprehending is a thinking process. Reading is a thinking process, not simply a responding to letters and words process. It is a thinking process. We are creating meaning. What is the meaning here? Does this make sense? And we teach the process to develop the skill. We need to print up t-shirts with that on it. We teach the process explicitly to develop the skill so they do it automatically, so they don't think about it. For example, identify supporting details, and I love to use graphic organizers because graphic organizers organize, they make explicit. So to do this, and this is one of the Common Core standards, Common Core state standards, as well as many standards. To do this, we do a story preview. We introduce a declarative statement related to the story. Billy Marble should have stayed at home. We provide students with this graphic organizer, and we have them read and look for supporting details as they read. Now, this invites students to read with purposeful intent. They're reading to find out something. These are not simply done at the end of a story. Now, many comprehension worksheets, which do little to help students comprehend, they read a story, students or teachers slap a worksheet in front of them and say, there, comprehend. That does little to teach them the cognitive processes of looking for supporting details. So, we teach the process, a very simple graphic organizer, and as they read, as they find the supporting ideas for Billy should have stayed home, they list them and the page number. This invites them to stay into the text. That's supporting details. We teach the steps, we use the graphic organizers, and here is where you use direct and explicit instruction. Direct instruction, it's not a method, it's not an approach, it is a pedagogical strategy, one strategy out of many. And when I'm teaching it, I say, boys and girls, to support a statement, we look at the statement, we look at the ideas, we look for things that make the statement true. Look at the statement, look at the story, in this case, read the story, look for things that make the statement true. And we would read this together and I would think out loud, this is cognitive modeling. Billy should have stayed at home. I see an idea here that may support that. Yes, he lost his pants. Absolutely, that supports that idea. Okay, I'm going to read on now. See how I'm using cognitive modeling, thinking out loud. I use direct instruction. I'm very explicit about teaching the steps, and then I use cognitive modeling. I'll do this many times with guided practice, doing a couple together, and eventually students will be able to do this independently using this nice graphic organizer. The green space alien was not good at catching humans, okay? Declarative statement, they find the supporting ideas and they list the page number. Cause effect as a pre-reading. Cause effect, looking just for effect. And cause effect is another common standard in many state standards and common core state standards. A cause is what happens. In effect, a cause is what makes things happen, and an effect is what happens. The cause is an event, something happened, and the effect is what happens. Cause is what makes things happen, effect is what happens. And that's hard to try teaching that to a second grader, but that's where we need. So we introduce this as a pre-reading activity. We give a short story preview, and boys and girls, in this story, Bob stood up on the bus. We have to see what the effect is or what happened. The space aliens grabbed Bob. We have to see what the effect was or what happened. And you can have the page number as well. So now they're reading with purposeful intent again. We're creating this scaffold. We use the story preview so they have a good sense of what the story is about. And they're reading with purposeful intent. We use this graphic organizer. Cause effect, looking for effect. That's B1. B2 is cause effect, looking for cause. Effect is what happens. Cause is what makes it happen. And again, pre-reading activity, short story preview, read through the effects, tell students we're going to look for the cause, and they're reading with purposeful intent. Again, some teachers like to have the page number, some think it's not important. You decide. And then that's B2. This should be B3. Kindly old Dr. Johnson made a mistake yet again. Cause effect for cause effect. Same thing, except you do both of them. The cause, they look for effects. Effects, they look for cause. But I would do these separately, especially with younger ones. First do just the effect, then just the cause, and then cause and effect for cause and effect. All right, inference is understanding an idea not explicitly stated in the text. We use clues and we tell children it's not guessing. You have to look for something in the text. And we use a graphic organizer. This is a pre, during, and post-reading activity. And we teach it explicitly using an inferral graph. We provide the inference question, and that's important. To do this, you must provide the inference question. Boys and girls, when we look for inferences, we do step one, we look at the inference question. As we read, we look for clues that make that question, that answer the question, or make that statement true. And then we make an inference based on the clues. Again, very specific, use cognitive modeling, do a couple together, and eventually they'll be able to do this by themselves. Inferring is not simply making a guess. It's making a statement or coming to a conclusion based on clues. What kind of person was Professor Marvel? Doesn't tell us explicitly, but here are some clues, and that it is very important for students to list the clues. Now here's the thing. Is it important that students can correctly fill out an inferral graph? No, this is a scaffold, a temporary thing, but we do this several times so that students begin to do this automatically. They engage in the cognitive process automatically. And Common Core State Standards. If I want to document that students are able to do this, that they are able to infer, I could have a cockamamie test where they read a paragraph and fill out a bubble or two. Or I could include an inferograph into their folder and demonstrate. This is more authentic assessment. Or I could use a cause-effectograph and put that in a portfolio or a support a statement. This is more authentic assessment. This gives me a much better sense of how students are engaged in these cognitive processes than a stinking standardized test. That's why we call it more authentic assessment. All right, same with a prediction. Predicting is not simply making a guess. It's making a guess based on clues, or making a prediction based on clues on what we think will happen. And again, you provide the question up front. What do you think will happen when? And then students are reading for purposeful intent, and they have their prediction. Now you can give a story preview up front and give the prediction up front, so they're reading for purposeful intent. You can stop halfway through the story. Everyone read to page 3 and stop there. Raise your thumb when you're there, and then make predictions, and then they complete the reading to see if the prediction was right. That is the predictograph. And the goal, again, it's not to be able to fill out the predictograph. We really don't care about that, although we do. This is a scaffold to hold them, to help them get to the next stage. The next stage is they're able to make predictions automatically without thinking about it during the act of reading. This engages them. Remember, reading is thinking. Comprehension is thinking. This engages their mind. They are thinking about what will support that prediction. What clues can I find as I read through this? That's prediction. Story grammar is another one, a common standard, and it's a cognitive process thinking about the elements of a story. Now, how you do this is I simplify it. Characters, settings, and events. Yeah, you can have problems and resolutions. No, keep it simple, keep it simple. You do a story preview, and you introduce some of the parts of the story grammar, and you tell students, okay, as we are reading, we are going to look for 3 important events here. Again, they're reading for purposeful intent. So during reading, they fill this out. And again, this should be done pre, during, and maybe post. In the old days, they'd finish reading and you'd slap something like this in front of them and you'd say, find the events. But that does not get them cognitively engaged during the act of reading. So we use it as a pre and during activity, and maybe some post, but mostly pre and during. And you can modify this, modify maybe just characters and events, or maybe I'll tell them the events and have them look for characters, or maybe the characters, events, and have them look for settings. You decide. And to modify it even further, I may have the characters, and I'll say, boys and girls, some of these events occurred, some of them didn't. We are going to read and put a check mark next to those events that occurred. See how you modify, you create structure. You could also use story grammar as a web. Title, character, event, settings, and they brainstorm on each one. Pre-reading activity, you might provide some of it. They're reading for purposeful intent again. Compare and contrast. That is another one. Now, I like to use a comparison chart versus a Venn diagram. This is just a little more concrete and a little bit easier. Provide a story preview at the front. As a preview, you tell students you're going to compare this to something else so they know what they are going to compare. It could be 2 characters in the story. It could be the beginning versus end of the story. It could be 2 characters from different stories. You decide. The important thing is that we are engaging a cognitive process, the process of comparing and contrast. So as a pre-reading activity, again, They're reading for purposeful intent. Look at both of the things, find the similarities, and identify the difference. Compare, and contrast. And I would do this several times in large group, all of these, depending on the age. A couple times with pairs or small groups, and eventually students can do this independently by themselves. You're not going to master this in one setting. With younger students, I may be doing this many times in large group, and then with a pair or small group, and eventually individually. And again, to document that students are able to engage in this cognitive process, I could have students do a cockamamie standardized test. I could, absolutely, and that would enrich the testing companies. Or I could use more authentic assessment. After students have demonstrated that they've mastered this cognitive process, they would complete a comparison chart on their own. I'd put it in their portfolio, and I would say, here you go, Mr. or Ms. Standards person. This student has demonstrated that they are able to compare and contrast. They've demonstrated it, and I've documented it. Demonstrate and document. Comparison chart. So think about it. How do you teach comprehension? Well, we don't really teach it. We teach the cognitive processes related to comprehension. How do you document academic standards? I showed you there. We use graphic organizers for comprehension, and we demonstrate and document. Cognitive modeling, thinking out loud, and graphic organizers, they make the cognitive processes concrete, and they organize thoughts.